All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Who's Right podcast, and here we go. All seasons keeps going. We just had non-tender deadline and 40-man roster cuts, Rule 5 cuts, and a couple surprises. But you know what? This might change a little bit the formula that Stearns is doing this offseason. Not much, right? It's all about depth pieces and stuff like that. So none of the big pieces are changing, but this does change a few things on the back end. So, but before we get into that, all of that, and the potential trades that we want to talk about, Victor, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Like you said, those trades don't really, or those non-tenders don't really matter too much. But it does hurt because those were prospects that were being built up in the system that we just, cut ties with. Unfortunate that it didn't work out. But Alex Ramirez, I think will get picked up by a ball club and probably be a fourth outfielder or even start on a major league team in 2025 or maybe even 2026. I think he has that potential. He's only 19 or 20 years old, and he's still a young player. So he will be back. So that's unfortunate. But Mike Vassell is really the one that got to me because he was one guy that I saw impacting the team next year. But like we've always said, in Stearns we trust. He's probably got already 10 steps ahead of us where he's already has his rotation depth piece in place. And so, Mike Vassell hurts to see leave because he's a homegrown talent. But at the end of the day, he wasn't anything special. And so we weren't losing too much. But now we get to talk about some fun stuff on the pod here.
Well, with Vassal, I don't think we're going to lose him. I don't think that's going to be. I don't think another team's going to pick him up because at the end of the day, for the Rule 5, when it comes to Vassal, they got to keep him on the ball club all year, and I don't think a team's going to take a chance. Maybe a lower end team, maybe, but again, they got to keep him on the major league club all year for them to keep him. They can't send him down. They got to keep him on the major league club. If they send him down, that means they're sending them back to us. And
And that's
so,
and that's why I was thinking he'd be on a team like the White Sox because as we get into talking about some trades, he was one of those pieces that I would have included in a White Sox trade because he's a younger talent, more controllable, and so I could see the White Sox or one of those lower teams picking him up just for pitching depth to have a guy that's not very expensive on your major league team.
maybe because again, he didn't have a bad year. I mean, he had a bad year. So it'd be interesting to see if somebody does pick him up because I don't think there's a much fear of him losing him because of that. But the real surprise for me was Ramirez because to get him off your 40 man, you had to actually cut him, and so he might be back. But he was a top prospect at one time for the Mets, and I know he's had a couple, about a month in, I mean, a year and a half of a bad season, and maybe they saw something. Now that Stern has had a whole year to see him, maybe it's something that he saw that he wasn't really too fond of. I'm gonna trust him on that. But Ramirez was somebody that we all kind of were hoping for. But this happens with guys in the minors.
Yeah, especially because we have so much depth down there. It makes you think that we are probably going to hold on to a lot of those guys that are major league more ready, but we're still developing a lot of prospects. So the past or our last draft pick, our number one draft pick was an outfielder, very versatile type, and will probably be more major league ready than Ramirez. And so, it was just one of those we didn't have room for him, so we let him go. But we'll see what other moves are made in the minor league system because who knows if who's safe now. We thought Alex Ramirez was safe, even though he was on the 40 man. But maybe a Jet Williams or Drew Gilbert or even Luis Angel are all up for grabs in in the hands of Stearns. So we can't tell, but that's why it's exciting to see this man cook.
Yeah, no, and you're right. Everybody's up for grabs because you know, there's a crowded infield right now with all the prospects coming up, and depending on what happens with Alonso, there's only one position left, and that's second base, and that's only going to take one player. So there's a lot of things that can go. I don't think we're gonna be holding on to a lot of these guys, you know, because you can't hold on to them because they're just going to get stagnant and their value is going to go down. So they either got to play or they got to get traded. And I see that. And we're going to talk about that in the next a few moments. But before we get into all that, out of the other teams, what are some non-tender candidates that are out there that you might think might be good? My top one, it's got to be Jordan Romano, right? Jordan Romano is a guy that you know was an All-Star, you know, a couple-time All-Star, was a closer for the Toronto Blue Jays, and with an elbow injury last year, was a guy that you know. If he was with the Mets, I don't think we would have given up on him just yet, like the Blue Jays did. You know, but Blue Jays needed to save some money, I guess, because he was going to get a $7 million contract from the Blue Jays. But you know, to get a 1 year on a Jordan Romano, just to get his value back up. Maybe not closing because we got Diaz, but number eighth inning guy for us, and getting those closing opportunities when Diaz can't do it. Let's take a flyer on Jordan Romano.
Yeah, no, that's obvious. That's definitely the top name that's on there on that list of non-tender candidates up for grabs. You know, Stearns has learned how to kind of make these reclamation projects work on the Mets, and we've seen that with other pitchers. You know, that was um, uh, Jorge Lopez last year, where he was a closer for Baltimore before, didn't have a great year, and came to the Mets and really came back into his own. He wasn't the exact same pitcher as he was before, but he was definitely a serviceable pitcher and was even closing games for us at that first half of that year. And in that same regard, I think that. Jordan Romano could probably be that same kind of guy for us. He had an ugly year last year. You know, his WHIP was like 1.43, which is not where you want to be. You want to be at that closer to 1. And his ERA was at a above a 6. And so ugly year for him, but definitely a bounce back cat in it. And I think, like you said, the only reason that this happened was because of the money. But you know, these are the kinds of guys that Stearns likes signing, and so excited to see that. A guy that I was excited to see on that non-tender list was Kyle Finnegan. You know, we've gotten to see Kyle Finnegan pitch in our division, and he's pitched against us pretty well. I can even remember back to last year, where he's pitched against us in some high leverage spots. And so if he comes back to this, if he comes over to the Mets and provides the same kind of stability where he doesn't have, you know, amazing stuff, but you know, pitchers are pitchers, and we need arms. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we take a shot on a couple of these guys. But it'd be hard to say, you know, because Stearns like to operate on that minor league deal kind of contract, and unfortunately, you can't do that with these guys. And so, if we're signing these guys, they'd have to be to a major league deal and have to look like a very promising candidate to be on the starting opening day roster. And so, but we'll see. I don't think Stearns has shown us that he's not afraid to do that because he's already made a major league signing. I do think he can do that. But you know, other notable. I think all those pitchers are definitely up for grabs when you talk about potential non-tenders that come over to the Mets.
Yeah, no, for sure. One that's really interesting is Patrick Sandoval, right? He just had Tommy John, so he's not going to pitch all year, I believe, or at least not going to be able to pitch until towards the end of the season. But he was a valuable piece. That's another interesting one by the Angels dropping him because he was a good pitcher for them, and so. If the Mets come in, this is probably later down in the offseason, right? This is not a priority right now just because he is a guy that's not going to pitch this year. But this is a guy, you get on one of those 2-year type contracts where you rehab him, he's under your control and you see his progress and he pitches for you in 2026. And so, him is a guy that I'd keep an eye on because he seems pretty interesting. And another guy, I'm not sure what the Rockies are doing, but Cal Contra. They could have traded this guy, and instead of trading him, they they non-tender him. It's kind of interesting, and back of the rotation kind of pitcher. And if they want some more depth because you can always send down McGill, and McGill has options. So I know Blackburn got tendered. We'll see how he rehabs. Because he's not gonna start the season on the or he's gonna make it back just enough for spring training, I believe. But we don't know how he's gonna rehab and how he's gonna look. So he's a guy that you put. Cal Contra in the back of the rotation, and maybe that's a piece that would work for the Mets.
Yeah, another guy, Brent Honeywell, another one of those relief arms that pitched to a sub-3 ERA. That's very big, especially in the bullpen where you can have that one of those stable arms. So that's another guy that I can see coming over to the Mets. It's scary because he was previously on the Dodgers, although he did pitch in Milwaukee. Those are both great pitching labs, and so you question if he can do the same thing. But he's had a career where it's been pretty good. And so I think he can replicate it. And he's a younger guy. I think he's only around 30 years old. Let me verify. He's 29 years old. And so another guy that can, come in as a young arm. And like you said, it's only going to be on a 1-year deal. Same thing with Hobie Milner, another Milwaukee pitcher where he pitched really well last year, or pitched decently well. Nothing like special. But when we're talking about bullpen depth, that's another arm that can be added. And because he was pitching in Milwaukee, I'm sure that there's that Davis Stearns relation there. And so maybe we can see another one of those guys. But the thing that sticks out to me with him is a 1.19 whip, which is what you like to see, because what we are so afraid of with our relief pitchers was them walking the whole world. And so hopefully we can bring in one of those stable guys that can have a low walk rate and that can provide, just a bulldog of an arm for us in the next year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And with these bullpen arms, you never know, right? They change from season to season. One guy that in case we do lose our bench middle infielder in Iglesias, is John Birdie. The Yankees non-tendered him, and he's a possible guy if Iglesias doesn't come back.
Yeah, no, John Birdie. I picked him up in the second round of my fantasy 2 years ago, and he disappointed me to no end. He was playing on Miami at the time. He obviously played over in New York with the Yankees last year, and so I don't know. He's one of those guys that is a utility guy that can play all over the field, all over the infield, but also can steal a lot of bags. Contact guy, you're not using him for offense because he doesn't have a great bat, but you can use him to pinch run, but also to come in and provide some defense. So that's an interesting one to look at. Guy that I was looking at actually, and as if you want a JD Martinez replacement. I know we're an anti JD Martinez replacement on this podcast, but if it's a depth piece that you're considering, Brian De La Cruz is a guy that can provide a lot of offense for you and provide a lot of home runs. If that's something that you think that you need in this lineup, depending on how this offseason goes, I can see him being an addition for the Mets as well.
Yeah, and I'm here shaking my head no. But at the end of the day, that's really going to depend how this offseason goes, right? Because if the Mets sign Juan Soto, that means the full time DH is Marte. We're not full time because he's going to share that DH position with Soto. So it really depends how this goes because you're right. Maybe a nice DH possibility for De La Cruz, but I just don't see that happening because our full time DH might be Marte, depending if we're able to trade him or not, because he's a guy that is not going to be able to play the field. Even if they don't sign Soto, I don't see Marte playing the field a whole lot, and so that's why that one. It all depends how the offseason goes for me, just because I don't see a place for him just because we have Marte on the team.
Yeah, and it stinks because Brian De La Cruz, although he can play the outfield, he has played a bit of right field. You don't want him out in the outfield. You want him to primarily DH, and you don't want to clog up your team with all these guys that can't really play great defense. Because, like you said, if we get Soto, then that's just another guy that is a defensive liability. And so it's just an option. But at least I'll say this about him: at least he can play the field, unlike a guy that we've had in the past, or guys that we've had in the past that play DH that are barely serviceable, and ones that are not even serviceable. And so um, well, yeah. Don't want it to happen. Don't want a lot of these ones to happen, except for the pitching side. I hope that we can go out and get some arms, some reclamation projects, like you said, and be done with these non-tenders. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what the Mets do.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So let's get into some potential trade opportunities that can be good for the Mets and for the other team. And the first one that I am going to talk about is actually everybody's been talking about this one is a potential Luis Castillo trade, right? Seattle has a deep pitching rotation, and Castillo costs them a lot of money right now. So and they need some offense. And there's a guy on our team that is from the West Coast that very versatile, and it's a guy that we all think should and want to be traded, and that's Jeff McNeil. So my trade for this is because we're going to take some money back because they're going to be getting rid of that salary. Is Jeff McNeil, Brett Beatty, and maybe some other down the road prospect for Luis Castillo.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I'd love to see Luis Castillo here. A lot of people talk to him about him as like a mid rotation kind of guy, and that's the same way that they talked about Manaya and Severino. And we've seen guys like that really shine on the Mets and become those ace level starters. And at one point, Luis Castillo was the Mariners' ace, and so we have to remember that. And although he's not the same pitcher as he was 2 years ago, he still has that potential to be back and that ace level pitcher. And so I'd love to see that. I don't see that happening for Jeff McNeil simply because he's slacked or he's lagged off with the bat a little bit. And although he does provide that versatility, they don't need any more defense, right? They need offense. And I think they're going to be looking more offensive to our roster, and it's going to take a little more than just eating a salary of Jeff McNeil to get rid of him. Brett Beatty, I agree with. I think that they might think that they can do something with him, although I don't see the Mariners having success with that. I'd rather. I honestly think that a Luis Angel gets it done over a Jeff McNeil type. So you put in Luis Angel, Brett Beatty, and then another pitching prospect that is more of a depth piece for them. That you might even be able to turn into a reliever. Uh, um, so, I can't think of any of those names right off the top of my head, but say like a Dom Hamill, you send a Dom Hamill over there with a Brett Beatty and a Luis Angel. I think that could get that trade done. And just to mention a lot of these names that we'll use to as our trade bait, we're gonna use over and over again because we're probably not gonna make more than one or two of these deals over the offseason. It'll probably be two max if we get one of these deals done. But that's what I think it takes to get done for Alicia Castillo.
Yeah, no, and it's a possibility, and I'm not against that, because you may be right. They may not want Jeff McNeil, not because of the offense, because at the end of the day, he did turn it up until he got hurt, right? Or he was doing decently, but mainly because of the contract. So it might not happen because of that, and Luis Angel and Brett Beatty, because they're really unproven, might not be enough. And so we'll see what happens. And but That's a potential trade possibility, and we get a pitcher back. We're trying to rebuild this rotation. Who knows? And let's move on to the next potential. Um, Trade opportunity, and this is the guy that everybody wants, uh, Garrett Crochet. What's your trade idea for Garrett Crochet?
Yeah, Garrett Crochet is going to be a tough cookie to get. We saw what it took to get him over to the pod, or Dylan Cease over to the Padres last year, and although it wasn't um, nice because we don't know what prospects we're looking at. This time we're going to know what prospects we're looking at and giving up, and so it's going to take a lot to get him over. A lot of our top 10 guys. So you got to start off with Jet Williams, right? Jet Williams gone. If you get a Garrett Crochet, it's going to take your top prospect to get him because, like we've talked about before, or like he's talked about, sorry, he wants that contract extension. And so, in the minds of us fans and maybe even the minds of Stearns, um, it's going to be worth it because you're extending this guy for another 6 years, and he'll be pitching on your staff for as an ace level starter for the next 6 years. So it starts off with a Jet Williams. You give up another couple of pitching prospects, maybe a Blake Tidwell or maybe even a Cowboy Otani, and you probably throw in another major league ready guy, and that gets it done. Maybe you're talking a Tyler McGill. You throw a Tyler McGill in there where he's major league ready, and that might even get it done because they're looking to replace that starter depth. And so Tyler McGill, Blake Tidwell, Jet Williams, and then another maybe position player like a Ryan Clifford might get that deal done. And that's a lot to give up. But I think that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, no, that's too rich for my blood. Unless you're including Robert or Robert in that deal. Jet Williams is not included in that deal because he's an untouchable for me. Sproat, Jet Williams are untouchable for me. Because I do think those guys are going to make it, and so um, I'm not including those guys in the deal. Everybody else up for grabs, even Gilbert. Maybe not Carson Bench, just because we just drafted him, but Gilbert, Clifford, even Joe Natong to a certain extent, they're all I'm willing to part ways with all those guys. The only two guys, and potentially three, are Sproat, Jet Williams, and a potential Carson Bench, just because we got him, just drafted him, and so because I believe Jet Williams is going to be either our starting second baseman or starting center fielder within the next year and a half. at least, minimum, if not this year. I don't see that happening. I don't think Stearns is going to let Jet Williams go. If that's what it takes, that's okay. We're out. They'll be able to fill the rotation up with somebody else. But that's got to include Robert in that trade. Because if I'm giving up my center fielder of the future, I want a center fielder back, and that's Luis Robert.
It would make it worth it if we did get a Luis Robert in this trade, because he is a young, maybe one of the best center fielders in the league right now when he's healthy, and that's the key, is keeping him healthy. If you negotiate the fact that he hasn't been healthy for the past couple of years, then that might be a trade that you swing. But he is the best center fielder in the league offensively. If he were to be included in that trade, that definitely make that Jet Williams trade package worth it. But we'll see. Jet Williams, like we say at the end of the day, is a prospect, and prospects, or parades over prospects, right? And I think that Garrett Crochet gets you that parade over a Jet Williams.
For me, he's untouchable. Can't do it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what Stearns does. But for me, he's an untouchable. The last potential trade idea, because obviously this is all going to be for pitchers. There's not many position players that I would trade for. That Brady Singer trade that happened yesterday. So disappointing to see. I know they traded a good prospect and Jonathan India, but I think we could have given them a little bit more or better, and gotten Brady Singer back in that trade. But I guess they like that prospect better. But one guy that is obviously on the market is Jordan Montgomery. I don't think it's going to take much. It's obviously not going to take any of our top prospects, and we would just have to give him up for prospect. I mean, give him up because we're going to take on that salary. And for a 1-year contract to get Jordan Montgomery back is, I think, worth it, because I think there's a couple of factors why Jordan Montgomery didn't do well last year. One, signing late. Two, he's a ground ball pitcher, and that infield over there is fast. I think those are just two other things that affected his play in Arizona. And so I think Jordan Montgomery could be had for little to no prospects just to take on that salary.
Yeah, listen, I wanted Jordan Montgomery last offseason. Him and Eduardo Rodriguez are both the guys that I wanted, and Arizona ended up signing both of them. So I do still believe in Jordan Montgomery. We've seen what he can do in the playoffs. He's pitched in New York before, so that checks 2 boxes. He pitches in high pressure situations in the playoffs and in the World Series, and he's pitched in New York and has been able to handle the media fairly well, and that's going to be the deciding factor. Does Jordan Montgomery want to come to New York? Because he pitched with the Yankees and had a bad experience. He got traded away, and I think that might have left a little sour taste in his mouth. And if he thinks that New York is a little bit of the same, in the Mets organization, then that's going to be a hard selling point, because, I think he still does have that no trade clause, and so he can decide where he wants to go to an extent. And so, but like you said, it's not going to take much. If I were him, I'd want out of there as much as or as soon as I can, because who wants to be on a team where they don't want you? You don't strive in an environment like that. And so, I think that it won't take much. You even send a Brett Beatty over there, trade a prospect
Even
that
that's too much.
maybe something that isn't going to cost you much, and that's we are a Brett Beatty loving podcast, but other teams might be out there looking at that like he's a lost cause, and so if we're talking to other Mets fans, he has no place on this team, and so that might be a worthy trade for them to make. But maybe you even make a trade for one of those lower end guys. They're always they don't need catcher depth, so I don't want to say Kevin Parada, but a guy like that might even get the deal done. We could have said an Alex Ramirez. That would have been the guy that I throw in that trade. But unfortunately, he's out. So maybe a guy like Mike Vassell, a guy that hasn't been doing so super hot, who's had down years in AAA, but you send him over there for Jordan Montgomery. I think those are the type of deals that get it done because they're just trying to get rid of him at this point. They severed that relationship.
Yeah, no. Owner came out and said a lot, and did that. And I just don't think it's going to take that much. I think Beatty's even too much, just because he's a guy that actually showed some versatility by playing different positions. Stern said he's going to play some outfield. So he's actually he might be the new Jeff McNeil with playing all kinds of positions. Who knows? But I think Jordan Montgomery they're going to want to give him away because there's not many teams that are going to want to eat that contract, and Mets are one of the few teams that are going to want to do that, and that can do that, and it's on a 1-year deal. And I think we get him out of that atmosphere. Maybe put him in the pitching lab, see if there's some other tweaks that we can do to him. And I think he'll thrive here in New York.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. So let's hopefully at least two of those things happen. Either Jordan Montgomery or Luis Castillo coming to the Mets, I think would be the most ideal for me to see that happen. But now I'm going to throw you some reliever trade targets that I would love to see as backups for Edwin Diaz or potential not Edwin Diaz replacements, but a B team, if you will. Even though these guys might even be better at times than Edwin Diaz. So my first one I'm gonna throw at you, which is these are both gonna be. I think they're gonna take a lot, and who knows if they're even going to be traded in this offseason. But the first one I'll throw at you is Ryan Helsley. Ryan Helsley has been one of the best relievers in baseball for the Arizona Cardinals. Sorry, for the St. Louis Cardinals, and he's been like that for years on end, for the past 2 years or past several years. And this is a flamethrower who has electric stuff, who can, throw 102, and that's something that the Mets have been missing from their bullpen, really. And I think this is an ideal candidate to set up Edwin Diaz. But like I said, I do think it takes a lot. I think you're looking at giving up some of your position player prospects because they do have an older team. It maybe takes it Ryan Clifford because they're looking for a new first baseman of the future, and maybe even a third baseman of the future. So maybe you even give up a Brett Beatty to go over there. And then you talk about other guys that are far off from the system, far down the system, like a Jesus Baez, who's looked really well or looked really good. So I do think it takes a lot to get Ryan Helsley over here. And it is just on a 1-year deal. But it could set up your bullpen in a really good spot for this upcoming season.
Well, and I think you said it there at the end. The problem I have with the trade is that it's a 1-year deal, and it's going to take a whole lot. I am not giving up the farm, so to speak, for a reliever, one, and two, for a guy that's only a 1-year deal. Can't do it. Um, he's good. He's a guy that had a good year last year, had a so-so year the year before. Again, it's one of those relievers that you never really know. Because you have a lot of Mets fans questioning the Diaz contract, right? Because so far it's been up and down the contract, right? He got he got the contract off his 22 season, and he didn't pitch last year or 23 season because of the injury. And this year, when he came back, if it was injury related or not, he came back so. And obviously, he was not going to have the 22 season again, but these relievers are so erratic that you really don't know what you're going to get. And to give up prospects for Helsley, even though he's been proven a proven guy, proven closer for the Cardinals. I just don't think you do it because of that, and only because of that, because of the prospect capital is going to cost you.
Yeah, it is going to cost a lot. It's a fun conversation. But another guy that I think can be a replacement for him that might not take as much because they're already trying to get rid of him. Uh, for 2026, they've already declined his option for 2026. That's Devin Williams. It might take a good amount because he is still under contract for this year. But I think it's more likely that you get a trade done with them because we've seen with the Milwaukee Brewers that they just unload pitching like it's none of their business, and so I think they'd be more willing than the Arizona. Sorry, I keep on saying that the St. Louis Cardinals would be willing to get rid of Ryan Helsley, but Devin Williams is another guy that I think can provide you another setup guy for Edwin Diaz. I don't want to see him closing games because I don't think that he has that clutch gene in him. We've seen him falter in the playoffs from a Mets personal standpoint, but even in the past, he does not have a good track record of pitching in those high leverage situations. So I do think he's the ideal setup man for Edwin Diaz if we can pull off that trade.
Yeah, I don't know why you're still in football mode after what the Giants showed us today. I would think we were already in baseball mode because of what the Giants showed
Listen,
us.
man,
I think
we
Malik Neighbors is in baseball mode. If you want to ask Malik.
I think so, but listen, I'm getting ready for Thanksgiving, and we talk about football on Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, it's not going to be fun conversations around the table this year, but yeah, I got to get that out of my head.
Yeah. No. Again, I do think it's going to take a lot for prospect capital. Here's the problem with both Devin Williams and Helsley is that you're going to only sign them for 1 year, right? Or have them for 1 year because you're not going to sign them. You're only going to have them for 1 year, and this is why they're going to want to close, right? So next year, these are two guys that are going to want to close. They're not going to sit behind Edwin Diaz, and that's what you're going to want from a guy that you bring in. We talked about it earlier in the pod about Jordan Romano. May be willing to do that unless he gets an opportunity this year to close somewhere, only because he's trying to get his value up, right? If he shows he's a guy that wants to that can still do it, he's going to be valuable for whatever team next year, regardless if he's closing games or not. And the problem is with Devin Williams and Helsley is that they're going to want to close games, right? There's not many closers in the game, so they're going to be teams that are going to sign them, whether that's St. Louis or not Milwaukee because Milwaukee doesn't pay anybody, but there's going to be a team that's going to pay for them. Even a Baltimore, right? They don't have a closer right now. There are going to be teams that are going to want these guys to be closing games for them, and to give up the prospect capital that it's going to take for both of these guys, not just Helsley, but Devin Williams as well, because Milwaukee's going to want some decent prospects back. That that's how they operate. They operate with the future in mind, in the sense that Tampa Bay, they're not going to be signing a lot of guys. They're going to be working off of their 40 man. That's how they win games. That's how Tampa Bay does it. That's how Milwaukee does it. They do it with prospects, and they're going to want some good prospects. And I just can't give up that many prospects for guys that we're only going to have for 1 year.
No, I somewhat agree with you. But like I said before, and like it's popularly said um, um, throughout the community, parades over prospects, man. I think those guys with a 1-2 punch can get you a parade if you build around them. Obviously, your bullpen is very volatile, but those are both guys that have proven not to be so volatile in the past, especially Devin Williams. He's pitched consistently well. And so I do think that if you have that eighth inning setup, man, that's going to be so huge for your team. You obviously still need that left-hander in your bullpen if you want to be a competitive playoff team. But you know, I don't know. They're enticing to me, but you also want to think about your future, and so I hear where you're coming from. And so, yeah, I don't know. The last trade target that you might look at going back to not Arizona, St. Louis, is Eric Fedde. You know, Eric Fedde pitched in the White Sox last year, but also got traded mid-season over to St. Louis to be that mid-level or mid-rotation guy. He's got 2 or 3 starter potential, and this is a guy that David Stearns likes and was targeting last year. You watch some other YouTubers, they'll tell you how much they love Eric Fedde. He went over to pitch internationally, I think in the KBO 2 years ago, and really worked on his stuff and refined it well. There's a guy that I don't think is going to cost much on a Cardinals team that I don't think is going to contend next year. And so because he's only on a 1-year deal this year. So I do think that can happen. But for what, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, and that's an interesting one. And guys, I'm coming off as a prospect hugger here, and I'm not. I'm all for. I think a lot of these prospects are going to get traded this off season, just because you don't have the position to even bring them up because these are guys that are ready. So a guy like Luis Angel and Beatty, Gilbert, even we have a crowded position. Because they're on a spot for them, right? There's only center field and second base, and maybe first base, depending on if Pete comes back or not. Which I do think we're favorites to sign Pete back. I still think we're going to get him back. So for me, I'm gonna go under the assumption that there's only 2 spots available for these prospects: second base and center field. And so some of these prospects got to go. And so, is it for Fedde? Maybe. They need some help. Fedde's not a bad pitcher. I don't know if I want to give up a Luis Angel for him. I'd rather kind of reserve a Luis Angel for a Luis Castillo trade, right? Or a Crochet trade. Those are the kinds of guys that I would trade for those guys. A Fedde might be somebody a little less, right? You throw in a Tyler McGill in that trade along with a prospect, right? You get Tyler McGill for a couple more years of control, and you get a prospect, and so it's something that it's a great possibility for Fedde. I'm on board for Fedde because I know Stearns liked him. I know that he's a guy that we threw out a couple times last year, and unfortunately, we couldn't guarantee him the start. And maybe we should have guaranteed him the start because we wouldn't be having to talk about it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting. And that's going to be what we're going to be looking at on the trade market. Like we said, we want to find some suitable starters or relievers that we can punch into this pitching staff and be real contenders. And I think that Eric Fetty can make us a real contender next year because he's going to be that pitching depth that we have been looking for. And he's going to be, think about it this way. He'll be like a Jose Quintana replacement. That's the level of starter where he's going to be pitching at, and that's a great Jose Quintana replacement to me. Like you said, I don't think it's going to cost too much to get him, but that only happens if we don't get the guys that we talked about at the beginning of the show. So if they go out, get Luis Castillo, if they get a Jordan Montgomery, those are filling in for those spots, and I think those are much better options in the long run. And a lot sexier names too, especially when you're talking to Luis Castillo. So fun names to talk about. There's some less fun names to talk about. I know that there's some rumors going around about Nolan Arenado. I'll just get this out of the way. Do not want that guy. We have Mark Vientos as our future third baseman. He's suitable at third base because he has that great arm. And Nolan Arenado, although he wants to be on a winner, I don't think it's this one.
Yeah, yeah. Big shout out to Jonathan in the chat. It's guys. I don't think Vientos is moving out of third. Yeah, I want to say this. Everybody's dreaming of if we don't sign Pete, Vientos is going to go to first, and I think Vientos has earned the right to at least give it one more shot at third. If we need to move him after next year because he's not playing good defense, which I doubt it because he was adequate over there. I don't think he's moving out of third, and why trade for a guy that is old and is already declining in Arenado. You know what I mean? And we don't need to sign or trade for a guy that may not provide any offense for us. Right? He's a guy that his offense is declining. His defense isn't. Right? He still has good enough range and a good enough fielder to be a solid defensive player. For one, his Gold Glove days are I think done, and his offense isn't what it used to be. And we got a guy in Vientos who I believe they're going to give him another shot at third because I think he's earned it, and I think he's earned it and is not giving up that third base spot.
Yeah, no, I don't want to see it happen. So let's hope that is not where the Mets go. And the only way I see it happening is if we get LeBron healthy in that same package. And so, like you said, that is probably not going to happen altogether. And so, yeah, man, I don't know. Other guys that are notable to you, do you have any other guys that have been kind of talked about that you don't want to see, or guys that you still like to see?
Not really. Those are, I think, the top guys. I know Jonathan wants to get Mike Trout at a 50% discount. Me too. That's a guy that I'll clog up my DH spot for because I want to keep him healthy. Uh, you know, he's a guy that I would love to see on the Mets, but I don't think Angels are going to give him up anytime soon, and I don't see him asking for a trade anytime soon because he's had his opportunities. But other than that, I don't see anybody else that I would want them to trade for. I was scouring, and there's not a lot out there that might be a candidate for a trade, other than the guys that we talked about. But it all depends, right? This all depends on what goes on in this offseason, right? Do we get a Corbin Burns? The Sean Manaea sign with the Mets? How much of a contract does Severino get? All right, he declined his option to come back, and so is it? do we re-sign Severino at a better discount? He just wanted the security of years. Who knows what that looks like? And it really all depends. These trades are um, potential trades that I think might work out for both teams, and really well for the Mets. But other than that, I don't see anybody else out there that and obviously Stearns is going to do some stuff that we're not going to see coming. So
Yeah, last one I'll throw out there that's not going to happen now because we've signed Jose Siri. We can talk about that on the back end of the show. Is Jameson Tyone. Jameson Tyone would have been another nice piece because he cost so much. I don't think he would have been a guy that would have cost a lot of prospect wise because we would have eaten a lot of that salary. But he was a center field target that no longer exists because we got Jose Siri. And so I think that's out the window. Maybe you get him because you want a cheaper option of filling in for Pete Alonso, but that is not really a Pete Alonso replacement.
you mean
So
Bellinger?
Sorry, yes, Cody Bellinger. Yeah, not Jameson Tyone. Same team, different player.
Way different position. Yeah, no, for sure. Cody Bellinger, if we don't sign Pete, I think is a Pete replacement at first because he can play first. And I don't think it's gonna, like you kind of mentioned earlier. I don't think it's gonna cost much. But the reason I didn't even think about him, because I know the Cubs want to trade him, but the reason I didn't think about him is because I do believe we're going to sign Pete back, and so but that's a good one to put out there because if we don't sign Pete, a good 1 year stopgap, because we can eat that salary, and that's why it's not going to cost much. He has a hefty salary, and is Cody Bellinger because I think he would do well in City Field. Jonathan wants to see us get Randall Grichuk as DH. We kind of talked about that earlier. Depending on what happens, we kind of talked about that earlier. I think DH is going to be for Marte. I don't think he's going to play a lot of the field, even if we get Soto. If we don't get Soto, or if we do get Soto, I see Marte kind of clogging up our DH position. And so it'll be interesting to see going back to the Bellinger thing is if Pete Alonso stays or goes. If he goes, would the Cubs and the Mets see something in wanting to trade there and have Bellinger play first base?
Yeah, no, that's the only reason it happens, I think. And so, but like I said, that is not a great Pete Alonso replacement. Although he plays great defense, his offense isn't up to par with Pete Alonso, and so want to see Pete back. And like I said, I think it would have only happened if he was going to play that center field position. And right now we got Jose Siri, and so let's talk about Jose Siri a little bit. Jose Siri is over in the Mets. What do you think?
I have mixed feelings about him. Obviously he's Harrison Bader replacement, a lot cheaper than Harrison Bader. Plays equal defense as a Harrison Bader, and actually has more pop than Harrison Bader. I think they're gonna play Siri just like they played it with Taylor, like they played it last year. They're gonna play the hot hand, and I think that's how it's gonna roll until one of these young guys are going takes a spot. They're gonna they signed them for defense, obviously, because this is one of those things that they're showing Soto. Hey, you're going to play right field because we got Nimmo on left, and but no worries, we got you covered. And this is what it's going to be. It's going to be it's the Harrison Bader replacement at a lot cheaper price tag, and I think with more pop than Harrison Bader. But at the end of the day, he's a fourth outfielder, just like Taylor is, and they're going to ride the hot hand. just like they rode Bader in the beginning of the season and then Taylor. I think that's what they're going to do now until one of these young guys takes over.
Yeah, not only a Harrison Bader replacement, but I was just thinking about this just now. Jesse Winker replacement, because not only does he replace Harrison Bader's defense fairly well, but he also replaces Jesse Winker's charisma in the bullpen. So I think he's going to be or sorry, in the dugout. So I think he's going to be that swagger piece that comes into the Mets with his hair on fire. He always plays with such passion. And so I could see him providing a spark, especially under guys like that need it, like Francisco Alvarez. I think he was very happy for that Jose Siri was coming over to the Mets. And the only reason I like that this has happened is because now we have an established captain who's claimed this team for himself in a cool, composed Francisco Lindor. And so I think at the end of the day, no matter how bad things get, Francisco Lindor has a hold of this team and won't let Jose Siri take over with his charisma, and it won't be too overwhelming. But we need a guy like that because we didn't have a guy like that for the past couple of years, and so I think it's a good replacement for Jesse Winker's charisma. But like you said, Harrison Bader's defense, he plays a phenomenal center field, and so his bat is going to kill us. At the end of the day, he's going to bat ninth, but his defense is going to be worth it. And at the end of the day.
Well, and I agree with Yuki on this one. I mean, with Jonathan on this one. I think that um, the problem with Siri is that you're right. He it's one of those things where he has charisma, but it's to the point of showboating, just like Jonathan said, and just because he doesn't always back it up. Even go back to this year, him and Soto had a little disagreement when they played, but that unfocused, I would say, I would agree with you, is that Lindoro is going to keep him focused. He's going to be on a better team. Maybe that part of that unfocused is that he was on Tampa Bay and they weren't really going anywhere this year, and so he kind of lost focus because when they were doing well, they he had a good season the year before. He had a decent season, so it's one of those things where we want to see him on a team like the Mets where you got some leaders around him to keep him focused because in Tampa he was one of the leaders, right? And you don't want a guy like that as being one of the leaders of your team. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Tampa traded him away because he isn't a leader, and you got a good group of veterans around here, around the Mets that would keep him focused.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And at the end of the day, he's going to play that platoon role. So he's not going to. Not only is he not going to be a leader, he's not going to be playing every day. He's gonna definitely share some time with Tyrone Taylor or even a Jet Williams or Drew Gilbert if they make it up to the big leagues this year. And so he's not even going to be a guy that's going to play full time, and maybe eventually he won't even have any playing time because one of those guys in the minor leagues takes over. So good stopgap guy. I think that's all he is, and we know that David Stearns values defense, and that's what we're getting in the Jose Siri.
Yeah, and we're about to end the podcast, but we'd be remiss if we don't give you a little Juan Soto update. And so, Buster Olney, take this for what you will. Just tweeted out a few hours ago that the teams are going to start sending contracts over to Juan Soto. And so we'll see. Obviously, that doesn't really, do anything for us because we were kind of hoping that it'd be done by now, and it's one of those things that, it's part of the process. The first stage was getting to know Juan Soto, Second stage was this is the second stage. Now sending the contracts over to Juan Soto. Third stage is the negotiations, and so it looks like unless things speed up, we won't see anything until at least the winter meetings.
Yeah, no, I think it happens this week. We've been talking about it offline, and you kind of convinced me. I didn't think it was going to happen until the winter meetings, but at the end of the day, what would you wait for? Obviously, with Scott Boras, you wait for the dramatics, you wait for that winter meetings, but it's Juan Soto's contract at the end of the day. If he has the money on the table and has these decisions to be made, and nothing's going to change, then why wouldn't he make a decision early? And so Scott Boras is fun, but he's not in control here, and Juan Soto is. And so if contracts are being presented this week, then I think it happens this week. So, I don't agree with you, Jonathan. I don't think he's going to the Dodgers. As much as they have been the evil empire of today's era, I don't think that they are going to be able to sign a guy like that. And or maybe they don't even want to. Obviously, they want to, but I don't think they're going to be able to outbid Steve Cohen. No one's going to be able to outbid Steve Cohen. Not even those darn Yankees across the bridge. And so, come on, man. Juan Soto is going to be a Met. It's going to happen this week.
I'm gonna stay cautiously optimistic on it. I don't think he's gonna be a Dodger, but the Red Sox might be a team that he might go to. Like you said, where Steve Cohen's not going to get outbid. If he goes to another team, it's because that's where he wanted to go. So it's either Mets for the most pay or somewhere else because that's where he wanted to go. So that's where I think it's going to land. Guys, we're going to end it there. We're just a little bit over an hour on this, and I think there's a lot going on. Little things, not a lot meaning in little things going on in the off season. Hopefully, we see some movement this week that we can talk about next week. But right now, let's get ready for potential Juan Soto news and Corbin Burn news. We don't need to wait for Juan Soto to sign to get Corbin Burn. So let's get it done. Let's get to it. But before we get out of here, Victor, any last words?
You mentioned it before. The New York Giants season is dead. We got embarrassed today by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tommy DeVito is not our future quarterback, like I like to believe, going into this week. And so all eyes are on Shedeur Sanders next year. But we're not talking about football. We're locked in baseball because that's going to happen first before the Giants are ever good. This is exciting stuff. Let's see what happens with this Juan Soto and the Willy Adames stuff. Don't want Willy Adames. If you want our opinion on that, go back and listen to our podcast on our free agent signings, our last podcast, Pete over Willie. But let's go Mets, baby. We gotta become this dominant powerhouse like Steve Cohen says that he wants to be.
Yeah, no, I'm looking for this Willy Adames news. What are you saying, Jonathan? I don't see it. Love to know what you're seeing with the Willy Adames stuff.
He's probably just talking about the contract that was pitched a couple of weeks ago, where it was 160 for over 6 or something like that. And so I don't know how accurate that was. I hope it's not. I hope that the Mets choose. I hope that they choose Pete over Willie. But I wish Juan Soto could play quarterback, Jonathan. That would be saving grace.
Yeah.
But over in the quarterback side of things, we'll see.
Yeah. No, for sure. We love him for quarterback too. But I'm not too thrilled with Sanders. But We'll see what quarterback the Giants decide to go with in the offseason. But before we get out of here, hey guys, subscribe to the channel, like this video. Let us know what your top trade targets are. What your non-tender targets are. Those are all pieces that won't affect the Juan Soto news one bit. So let us know how you're feeling on replay. Let us give us your comments and let us know what you're thinking. And until next week, guys, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.